My next guest is really hard to miss. Yellow Randolph is his Instagram handle, and we met at a party. Let me set the scene. It's a conscious dance party. Everyone is dressed up and colorful and beautiful. I personally felt underdressed, so I went and asked my friend to give me some bedazzles and bejewels for my face so I could fit in a little bit more. But there was Randolph. I didn't know his name at the time, but he was bright yellow, including his beard. But it wasn't until later when I overheard him say something that my curiosity really got piqued. Later on in the evening, I heard him say to someone that he's been wearing yellow for 8 years. I remember going up to my friend and saying, like, you know that guy in the yellow? I heard him say that he's been wearing yellow for 8 years. And we were just so interested. So I went up to him, asked him his story, and I immediately invited him onto my podcast. I just loved his philosophy and loved the stories that he had to tell. He also asked me like super interesting and great questions. One of the first questions he asked me was like, "What's your brand?" And after thinking about it for like 30 seconds, I said, "It's relating, you know." So Randolph is a business builder. He's a brand builder. He's currently building the Tribe of Colors, and he's built Beer House, which is this iconic brand in Cape Town on the Party Central street of Cape Town. And he is just fascinating. He loves the entrepreneur organization culture, EO, and he also loves the burner culture. He's also recently been diagnosed with ADHD. So we go through what's it like to be diagnosed with something like ADHD in your adult life, and also what's the difference between people who have things like ADHD and use it as a superpower or use it as a crutch. And right at the end of the episode, I asked Randolph what is his favorite travel story is, because he's been a nomad for years. He's traveled all over, and I absolutely love the story that he told at the end of the podcast. He also had me laughing in stitches at the beginning of the podcast. So you'll see in just a minute what that was all about. Stay curious, stay connected, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. I'm so excited to share this with you. Enjoy. Hi, Randolph. It's so great to have you on here. I was just giggling my ass off because just before getting onto this recording, Randolph asks me, "Is this t-shirt yellow enough?" And honestly, I've never been asked that in my life before. And just to give everyone who's listening some context, we met just a couple of days ago, like literally like 2 or 3 days ago at a party. You were wearing all yellow, and I overheard you telling someone that you were yellow for 8 years. And it's one thing to show up to a party wearing yellow, and it's a completely other thing to be committed to this yellowness for 8 years. And so I was really curious about you, and I went up, we had a conversation, and that's where I invited you to chat on here. So thank you so much for being on here, and also for sparking the conversation, like being the person that you are that makes people curious. So I guess my first question for you, Randolph, is what do you hope to achieve with your yellowness?
I think I've already achieved it for myself. I raised my own vibrations, my own lifestyle, the way how I connect with people. And you do not believe how many people, approach me asking me with emotional curiosity, why this yellow, you know? And my usual answer is sunshine, smiles, and happiness. Because this is what, thanks to the color, I'm being gifted, and occasionally I'm gifting to the world. And this leads to, together us raising the vibrations a little bit and a little bit. Every day, a few more smiles in the world planted through the simple use of a color. This has improved my life so drastically, made me, find positive connection to so many people that I do not see a chance that anytime soon I want to stop wearing yellow. You know, and being perceived as what they often say, is a ray of sunshine. And ultimately,
Mm.
it's part of my own story. Being born and raised in Germany, where, well, we all know weather isn't usually as good as it is in the sunny Cape.
Mm-hmm.
And, being drawn to South Africa by the sunshine. And while I was living here, realizing there is more to the sun than just the sunshine at daytime, I really, want to get closer to it without burning, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I do, want to become a symbol for the sunshine, the smile, and the happiness it's giving to us.
Wow. So when I asked you the question, why 8 years, you had a really great response to it, which was something along the lines of like, what do you mean, why not longer? And I thought that was like such a great mindset shift, right? Because one person could look at it and say like 8 years is a long time, and another person can look at it and say like 8 years is not enough time, you know? So what happened 8 years ago that made you permanently commit to this lifestyle of sunshine, smiles, and happiness?
Look, in hindsight, I can look at old pictures of mine, from the last 42 years, and I do see yellow pieces of clothing playing a role, but never the role that they started playing in 2015. Um, it kind of started in 2013 when, we were sitting and conceptualizing the Beer House brand, which is my business here in Cape Town. And us and the designer were like brainstorming and looking at colors. And because my briefing was clear, it needs to be a signal color and it needs to be an iconic logo. And I think it was him, who was like, well, then it needs to be yellow because the color of beer, the joyful color at that, is gold, or better symbolized by yellow. And that convinced me. And it became a business color, but not yet a color that I would consciously wear.
Mm-hmm.
2 years later, well, yeah, 2015, it happened that I was kind of, well, at a holiday in Thailand, where in these shopping streets, all these tailors approach you with like cheap suit, 2 for 1, you know, trying to sell their boring, dark, gray, black suits, tailor-made at a really good price. Me never wearing a suit, not owning a suit at that time, I was like, I don't need that. But these guys they don't stop harassing you about buying a cheap suit if you say, I don't want a suit, I don't need a suit. They continue. So I was like, I need to say something different. So I started showing them my business card, which was all yellow. And I said, yeah, I only buy if you've got this color. And I thought I'm winning because they were all like, oh no, sorry, no, sorry, no. I was, able to walk freely without being harassed by them until like the 20th or so Taylor was like, yeah, I got this color. Come in. So
Wow.
now, having no intentions to ever buy a suit, I was had to, I was bound by my own word. Just told him that I want one. And I was like, you know what? $200 for like a tailor-made silk suit with 2 shirts. That actually is a great deal. Let's get a shirt. Let's get a suit. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
I need it one day. And I thought of, using it as a marketing gag for my business. And, a couple of weeks later, I went to this global entrepreneurship summit in Nairobi, Kenya. And I packed the suit because it was the only suit I owned, thinking that maybe it's a formal event, maybe I better wear it, have it in just in case. And arriving at the welcome reception, I realized, hell yes, that it's a very formal event. Everybody wearing suit and tie. So on the second day, I was like, let's wear a suit. And I would say that experience of attending a serious conference, suddenly dressed all yellow, changed my life. It really
Wow.
was like people approached me, not like they approached me the day before wearing like whatever, jeans and a white shirt or whatever I was wearing. But no, they approached me with curiosity, a smile, friendliness. And they were like, why yellow? Why the suit? What's your story? And I mean, everybody attending business events knows, you know, it's always about how do I start the conversation? And suddenly I started launching into conversations on a topic of curiosity and emotion. And that, in a nutshell, is the reason why today, good 9 years later, I'm still, I'm loyal to this color. It's the only permanent thing in my otherwise permanently changing life, that this color is guiding me through life and through my interactions with people, and makes me connect with people instantly on an emotional topic, because it's now not about who are you, where you're from, the standard question of all these first interactions. But no, we are talking about color, and color
Mm-hmm.
automatically is an emotional topic. And some people just are like, oh no, they don't they don't feel about colors. But there's also people that, within like 3 minutes of meeting them, they're telling me, oh, their favorite color is dark purple because it helps them to deal with all the sadness in their life. So for me wearing my color, they immediately open on their super deep topic, allowing me to deep dive and share, allowing them to share deeply about their lives, which to me is such a beautiful way of connecting, because you are not starting with the formalities, but you start on a topic that you can but don't have to open up about.
Wow, fascinating. Do you ever, if you're completely honest, do you ever have days where you don't feel like wearing yellow, but because you're committed to the cause and this is your brand, do you ever have those moments of like, no, never?
I don't. It hasn't happened yet. It has happened that in the mornings I don't feel great waking up, and I'm asking myself, do I really want to? And then the very latest, if I look into the mirror in the morning and maybe I don't wear anything, or I'm questioning, I'm like, no, something is missing. Um, because that seeing the color makes me smile at myself, you know,
Mhm.
looking down, at my watch or whatever it is yellow on me makes me a little happier, even if it is maybe a darker day. In the beginning of my yellow journey, I was obviously asking myself, do I really want to do that? So it happened that in, I think, January 2018, I was packing for a weekend in the Tangpa Desert with friends, not
Mhm.
Africa burn, but like just an outing with family and friends. And I was like, oh, wait, this yellow thing. Did I really start doing it daily? Let's challenge myself and not do yellow for this weekend. So I packed all my remaining clothing that wasn't yellow into my one suitcase that wasn't yellow. So I think the only thing yellow that I packed was my toiletry bag, because I only have a yellow one. And for that weekend, I was like trying not wearing yellow and how it felt. And, it was a great weekend. We danced in a pink onesie and had, fun with these people. But then also at the end of the weekend, I was like, it was a great weekend, but it would have been a little bit more fun having my yellow. So, and
Mhm.
ever since that weekend, that question doesn't present itself anymore. I got no doubts. It is my color. It works for me. And, you know, the rest is history.
It's almost like you squeeze the last bit of doubt out of that weekend and you're like, let me see what this would give me. I love that. So if we had to just like rewind a whole lot and, revisit your youth and your childhood, what are some themes or some things that happened in childhood that have mm, helped you become who you are today as an adult?
Cool. There is the chronological story, and there is the, well, rear view view into the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
And I would say that, you know, early on, like in my early teens, I probably did realize that I'm different, somehow different. I feel different, and maybe to an extent, a bit of loneliness at feeling like that. Only 13 months ago, in February 2023, I realized what made me different all my life. And I've since then revisited my whole life, and everything makes so much sense. And that being different is usually called having ADHD.
Mm.
So being neurodiverse and having a brain that thinks not like the 90% majority, but slightly different, makes me, well, think differently
Yeah.
and come to different conclusions given the same input that others might receive. So I tend to be a bit more creative, not an artist, but creative in my work as an entrepreneur. I do see gaps that others don't. I, you know, have a different risk affinity and appetite. And I probably started having a relatively unusual life at around the age of 14, 15, when I was able to make my own decisions. You know, enjoying traveling all by myself across the US at, I think it was age 15. Finding interest in niche topics that I suddenly was able to connect to strangers on the internet, building niche websites that suddenly turned into relatively big and successful enterprises, and always kind of seeing the gaps that others didn't was really, what dominated my life since.
Hmm. Before getting the diagnosis, how did it impact you not knowing the diagnosis?
Mm, I think I mentioned, in hindsight, I can probably say, yes, I felt alone to an
Mhm.
extent. I've been a loner for much of my youth. Didn't really start after a first relationship. I didn't start dating until I was, I think, age 26 or so. And, but also, focusing on the one thing that intuitively I seemed to get right, which was building an online platform, which turned into one of Germany's biggest online communities, where I found meaning in hosting a community of outcasts, of people that found an interest in this new online space, and suddenly also suddenly having a status there, being the founder and, being asked for advice at age, what was it, like in 2000, yeah, at age 19,
Mm.
I was curious, and I continued building that community. I continued building a business without ever having trained for this kind of, well, enterprise.
Mm-hmm. And ever since the diagnosis, and you know that you now know that you have ADHD, how has, if at all, life changed?
You mean since the diagnosis?
Mm-hmm.
I think I grew up with a lot of questions about myself, thriving in certain areas and struggling in others, and realizing that where I thrive and where I struggle, this is very different to most others. And now, looking back, it all makes sense. It suddenly all makes sense that I'm able to focus on things that fill me with passion. I'm struggling to do things that do not fill any of my needs. So I got a significant administrative backlog, dealing with taxes, dealing with accounts. All of this is something that in whenever I had a successful business, I by luck, I wouldn't even call it intuition. I found staff members that volunteered to take over these tasks because they realized the boss really does have zero interest into that, and it seems to be necessary.
I love
So
that.
this kind of like, and this can become a huge liability if, due to lack of luck, you don't find that staff member, you
Mm.
don't find a business partner who does it, and suddenly you're running a business without a functioning accounts department. So, in this, or a department where contracts lapse and things are not being looked after because the head of the enterprise just has zero feeling for that, you know, has zero interest to deal with it and thinks, another few days won't hurt, another warning letter, who cares? So that probably describes my biggest weakness. And now looking back, and after the painful loss of two businesses that I lost exactly that way, I can say, okay, that was unnecessary. If I had known earlier that this is such an obvious and blatant deficit in my life, and there is others with the same struggle, and I can learn from others how they solve this struggle by having an integrator that, complements their visionary skill set, I would have had probably quite a few more successes and less failures in my business life. And probably that might also extend to some of my, you know, aspects in personal life, that not having this understanding of, yes, I am different, but different doesn't only mean positive. It also means there's weaknesses that I need to cover for. That is a learning I would have hoped for myself to have years ago,
Mhm.
but I didn't. So now it's, after several steps back and, introversion and finding myself, learning about myself particularly in the last 4 years, this is now where I'm now coming back to a new starting point where I believe I understand myself significantly better than I did, you know, 15 months ago, four
Yeah.
years ago, 20 years ago. And I feel much better prepared to launch something new that is now catering to my needs, not only by intuition, but also by design.
Mhm.
And designing
Nice.
something that doesn't only resonate with the market, but also resonates with my own values and needs. So this is what makes me incredibly excited, and something that, I'm looking forward to start working on quite soon.
What happened about a year ago when you got the diagnosis? What led to that happening?
Well, February 2023 also marked the loss of a significant business of mine. You know, I was, until then, I was the owner of the building that Beer House on Long Street is housed in, that beautiful yellow Victorian building.
Mhm.
And, I had known for quite a while that the bank was kind of unhappy with how I dealt with cash flow restrictions during COVID. And even though I was paying them, there was a deadline which I simply decided to ignore. Instead of doing what every sane entrepreneur does, dealing with uncomfortable issues and sorting them out, finding a solution, I left it to the very last minute, thinking that just like, with my school degree and other deadlines, it's sufficient to start working on that, like on the 11th hour.
Mhm.
Um, friends and connections were very surprised to see me putting a call for action onto my socials. I need 6 million rands in 10 days. And I never really posted a follow up on that. But reality is, I thought I could raise that funding in around about 10 days. And reality is I did. Friends and family came together. I had 6 million rand transferred to FNB, these efforts, um, a day before the deadline loomed, only to then find out on 10:30 a.m. of the auction date that the effing liquidator, who hadn't really communicated well with either my lawyer nor me, had sent an email to tell me, well, thanks for the 6 million rand. Counter to what I previously said, we need another 2.8 million rand on our bank account by 4 p.m. today. Otherwise, the auction will go as planned. And that was kind of uncool because while I managed to raise that 6 million, in 10 days, I didn't have the means to now add another 50% of that within what was it, like 6 hours. So that's where I lost it. And that made me realize, or at least made friends of mine realize that, Randolph, why? you know? And part of that, and like a couple of days later, and obviously, I mean, that leads to a big crisis. I mean, that isn't something that you wish to anyone. And in that down moment, it's like it probably made me more open to, critical comments. And one of those comments was a very dear ADHD friend of mine who I regularly stayed with, and her husband, she said, Randolph, maybe you are ADHD too. And I was like, me? I mean, I've heard that before, but it kind of made me more open to explore what is this ADHD thing. And I think in the public perception, or at least in my perception, ADHD is this hyperactive thing, that people that are always, the energizer bunnies bouncing around the room and have. And I knew that's not me, I'm not that kind of hyperactive person. I'm got no issues living in my own head for a while. So, but her asking that in that moment made me open to it and realize, boom, that's it. It's been that all my life. So, and that made me walk back my whole life, look at all of this, and realize, yo, there is so much that I missed. So much that I didn't know, and allowed me to learn new habits and skills, or starting to learn that. It's obviously an ongoing process. It won't ever be finished, and I'm just in the midst of it. But yes, it's definitely, changed my life completely and made me realize how many of us are out there, and how many of us aren't yet diagnosed, you know, and this also, turned into one of my newest hobbies. Because I mean, whether I call it now a non-profit initiative or hobby or passion project, depends on your perspective. Ever since COVID came, I kind of stopped, also counterintuitively, stopped working on for-profit businesses because kind of the message of COVID was, it's not worth it anyway, but I kept myself busy launching and starting small, impactful communities, optimized not for financial return or size, but for impact for those that participate. And the newest of those communities is that I launched an ADHD for entrepreneurs group, which within 10 days or so turned from like the first 5 friends of mine that I added to think now it's 140 and a total of 230 neurodiverse entrepreneurs, most of them in the ADHD community, but also, others in the autism community, in the dyslexic community, and using tools we learned as members of the EO Entrepreneurs Organization to interact and share experiences. So now suddenly, from being all by myself with I'm different, within a matter of a year, I turned into having a network of super connected entrepreneurs. Many of those show exactly the same habits as me. Sometimes I get a lot of private messages now from this group, and I respond. We quickly get on the phone, and within 3 minutes, a stranger living in Nepal and me are able to finish each other's sentences because our thought patterns and structures are exactly the same. Our risk appetite, our hunger for adrenaline and excitement is matched, you know? And from being by myself, I'm now part of a tribe, an ADHD entrepreneurs tribe that is better than all therapy can be, because it's now not a one-on-one session with someone where I explain my thoughts and ways, but it's suddenly like I'm daily talking in this group, this tribe of, awesome people with incredible ventures, with incredible stories, successes and failures. And we are able to, you know, finish each other's sentences.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. What I love about that story is that you can turn it into a superpower. Because I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Randolph. What makes a difference between someone who gets a diagnosis of dyslexia or ADHD or anything and uses it as a superpower compared to someone who uses it as a crutch or as an excuse?
Mm, the difference is probably mindset. Probably also, I mean, the total card of hands you were dealt with, because here I am. Yes, I've got this ADHD thing, which is neither a superpower nor a crutch. It's a difference. And it's about how you are welcome to the world. And, you know, because this tendency of your brain to think different can lead to you having an incredibly frustrating time when attending a school system that's built for the neurotypical person, the
Mm-hmm.
normal person. It can lead to you being discriminated against, not based on your color of your skin, but on your behavior and unusual ways of looking at the world. And it can, like all discriminating factors, it can turn into a huge liability. And I mean, speaking as a white, tall, European, living in Africa, so I do know what privilege looks like. And I, realized that not having attended a normal school since my first day in school, but a Waldorf school that is not catering to, not specifically catering to ADHD people, but is more inclusive and more catering towards non-normal habits, probably meant that I had much less frustrating moments than the average privileged ADHD person, that is going to a school where permanently you are being told, don't do this, do it like this, color by the color, don't color by the number, don't use your
Yeah.
own imagination and creativity because there's no place for this.
Mm.
So having attended a Waldorf school for the first 9 years of my school life probably was the single best thing that could happen to me, even though I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that school system, but it certainly was better than going to a regular private or public school.
Got it. And why are you not a huge fan of that school system? Of the Waldorf school system, right?
Ah, look, that's a um, it does have its own habits that are kind of nuts and, not for the same people. And, when my Waldorf school and me decided to amicably part ways, e.g., I was kind of kicked out of school, it was also good to leave that behind and rather go to a system, public school in Germany that was easier to gamify and cheat. So, I was then enjoying the freedom that system was giving me. And, but it's in principle, I do believe in alternative schooling. I did a deep dive, many rabbit holes opened when COVID came, and I had to look for, what kind of schooling and curriculums, remote versus world school versus other school systems I could, find for her. But, you know, in the end, in her particular case, I wasn't able to find something better than sending her to a Waldorf school again, which I don't think she will go to much longer than her current sixth school year, So, because every school has its limitations, and the Waldorf school system is good for the first few years, but later I think
Mm-hmm.
it's not that good anymore.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. So I'm curious about what role failure has played in your life, from getting kicked out of school to losing the beer house to all, different failures. What role do you think it plays for yourself personally and for society?
I think that highly depends on what kind of society and culture you come from. You know, in German culture, failure is seen as something negative. I think in the US, you got a, culture that is way more appreciative of seeing failure as a learning opportunity. And in South Africa, I think everybody that can afford to goes, is told to wander the risk averse path. Even though South Africans tend to be better than average at making a plan and finding solutions.
Mm,
Mm, for me, it wasn't ever something terrible. I think I realized quickly. I would say that, my parents kind of communicating to me that at age must have been 17 or 18. I had moved out of the house before, but they kind of told me, well, we are not going to financially support you anymore because we realized your business is actually doing good enough to, support you. But if you fail, we will be there for you, and we will kind of like support you through your studies. So
mm,
these studies, my time in a regular university never came. Um, but it gave me a lot of mental freedom to risk it all every single day when I started scaling my then smaller business to, a bigger size, which then led to a good exit, which led to savings that allowed me even more freedom to follow my passions and fund my own failures as well as successes. Failure beyond that is, I mean, it's always painful, um, but it's always been something where I learned. maybe not fast enough. Maybe it wasn't painful enough when it first happened, because, I would say the failure in Feb last year was the wake up call should have been, an earlier failure in 2019. Mm, but it's okay, I mean, I'm not talking out of a position of total poverty and homelessness. Um, I'm still sitting in a nice yellow home here in Cape Town. And I'm looking forward to start a new business, maybe without significant funding to launch it with, but an incredible network and understanding for myself that out of these failures, incredible, impactful businesses are going to be born out.
Yeah, got it. So on your bio on your Instagram, it says that your mission is connecting people. So I'd really love to understand that more. What does connection mean for you, and what is missing these days in modern day connection?
Mm. A connection itself probably has multiple elements. The one being, you know, one-on-one human connections that can go from hello and goodbye to I want to move in with you. Mm, to me, it goes beyond that it is the thing that energizes me, when it happens to me on the one-on-one, but beyond that, when I'm involved in building platforms that people connect on. So when I'm not the person saying, Anna, meet Tabo, but when I know you are a guest at my beer house and you might meet Tabo there, and I will never find out that this meeting happened, except if by pure coincidence I meet you in 10 years' time and you say, oh, beer house. That's where I met my fiance. Finding out that this happens, and it doesn't only happen at my beer house, but also at my club networking parties that I run in Europe once a year, that it happened in the Gully community that I ran, from 1998 to 2008, that I'm in charge of building and having established a platform that people use to connect with each other, to learn, to empower themselves. That to me is the single biggest satisfaction that I get out of life. At this Club party that happens every September in Cologne, there is usually a sweet spot at around 1 a.m. when the work is done. Everything that went wrong already went wrong. Everything that went well, you can now see play out in front of me, when I can start having my first beer and just observe, often without being noticed. Well, that was before I started wearing yellow and people knew about that. But in the old days when I wasn't wearing yellow at the Club, and just observing, the vibe happening.
Mm.
And, same on a Friday, Saturday in their house, when you just see it's a vibe. And I played a role in making this vibe happen. That
Mhm.
is when just staring at it and soaking it in and smiling. That is the happiest space I can be. And it's for that kind of feeling that I work, that I say building platforms for people to connect on. That is my mission.
Mhm. And how can people connect better these days? What's missing in modern day connecting?
Hmm. Um, well, I do feel that, again, I enjoy big privilege of having learned tools and methods to connect with people that a lot of people don't have. So since 2017, I'm a part of an organization called EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, um, which is a global organization with 14,000 members or so. And every entrepreneur with $1 million turnover a year is able to join. Not everybody is accepted. It's an interview process where where your mindsets and interest, what you are looking to get out of this is being tested. And this is probably only the second time in my life that I met a circle of people where I was like, this is my tribe. And what made it my tribe is that I met my quorum, which is a fixed circle of entrepreneurs meeting once a month under a very strict protocol and meeting rhythm, um, where we get together to share our 1 to 5%. So where we share not the stuff that we talk about in everyday life, the other 95%, but the 1 to 5% that really matter, but that we can't share with anyone else. We meet under the condition of complete confidentiality and the agreement to only share experiences, not opinions. And these and a few other additional rules and us taking it serious means this now turns into a very significant part of my monthly routine where I can, take inventory and share it with others, get, you know, get other people's feedback and sometimes like experience shares and others and suddenly not feel alone anymore. That is probably the big difference, that EO Forum brings to the life of entrepreneurs. And so what it's bringing is not like a connection to, oh, I'm meeting 20 new people. No, I'm meeting a circle of people that I now fully trust and can fully open myself to something that many people don't have in one person in all their life. Because, you might be married to the best man, but there's certain things you might not be willing to share. You might be in business with someone, but you will never be able to share certain doubts and issues you feel in business yourself. This idea, of entrepreneurs having to fake it till you make it. Parts of that are true because you sometimes have to promise things that you don't yet know how to deliver. But you
Yeah,
also
I,
need
I
to
call
have
it
your
telling the
space.
truth in advance. It's like, I'm not lying, I'm just telling the truth in advance. That's my strategy. It works 100% of the time when it works.
Really? Okay. Well, in my experience, it doesn't always happen. When I tell you the truth, I will do my end of year financials or send you over receipts a week from now. Look, there's people that are waiting for that week from now to end for the last 10 years. So, but I love it. Telling the truth in advance, yes. And but reality is, it's it sometimes is necessary to be this optimistic entrepreneur. And I don't think that's only true for entrepreneurs. That's probably just as true if you are at work. And you have this deadline for work. If you telling your partner, baby, don't worry, I got this. You might have your doubts and you might not have people, but you can be open about that. And for me, so this deep level of connection is something that I enjoy a lot, that I thrive on, that if I'm joining a new forum, sometimes it's just on a subject matter, not on the whole life, just on, how to better utilize an incredible tool like psychedelics better. So I've got my closed circle and group of, entrepreneurs that just exchange their own experiences on and their deepest and
Mhm.
wildest thoughts and experiences that they had, when enjoying psychedelic retreats or so. And having these circles in my life is incredibly valuable. The connections I get from that, and wondering, why don't other people have it? And maybe that is the missing tool to assist others, connect others in a meaningful way to elevate their experiences.
Mhm. But I love that. Just really want to highlight something that you shared there, which is having rules for engagement and any kind of like community is so powerful. And in most friendships and circles, we have unspoken rules, right? Like confidentiality. Like I'm going to assume that you're not going to tell everyone, or maybe not, something else, right? But with those rules of engagement, and my favorite one that you also shared was like, we're going to share experiences, not opinions, because opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, right?
True,
Um,
yeah.
but really coming from a place of experience makes a huge difference. And I really, really love that. So one of the topics we also connected on when we first met was the topic of being a nomad. So I traveled for 14 years on and off, and I shared with you that I really didn't like the title nomad, so my friends would call me a yes mad instead. And so I'm curious, what has being nomadic brought to your life? What has it taught you? Has it changed you? Tell me a little bit about that part of your story.
Spontaneously, I wanted to say embracing uncertainty, but I do sense I embraced that already before in my life.
Hmm.
It's diversity of connection and experiences. I mean, part of ADHD, is that I get bored very easily. So not, wanting to live the same week twice and, doing the same task once a month leads me to, thriving in this always changing environment. If something is great, or if I come to a place and I meet people for the first time, I got so much potential to try something new by still being me. If I meet the always same friends in always the same environments, I it's challenging to change because your friends have the same routine. They are not going to change just because you do.
Hmm.
So, and I would say, for example, now, I went to Egypt late 2020, mm, a family holiday with my daughter. You know, at the end of it, I was like, he needs to go back to school. I don't need to. Let her fly herself. She knows how to do that. And I'll stay a little longer, you know, and that turned into 2.5 months in a completely new culture, and as a nomad, you are now not bound to the hotels and resorts, but it can now be an Airbnb. It can be a guest house, hostel. Ultimately, all I need is a tiny room with a bed and a decently clean shower. And wherever I find that, I can settle. It's just for a day or two, but sometimes that turns into 3 weeks. Um, and I get to know that environment, whether that's now the couch of a friend, an Airbnb, a brand new place, and I get to decide who to hang out with, who to connect with. And I often find myself then, trying something new because you just do what others do. But it's your decision, do I now go hang out in a bar and watch the soccer World Cup, or do I rather hang out with someone who I just met who seems interesting and where I can learn something new, you know? So what I realized at the end of the 2.5 months in Egypt is my habit of, like all Westerners, or many Westerners, ordering a beer with every meal that you have in a restaurant had kind of disappeared, you know? I mean, I still love the flavor of beer. There is nothing better. And the variety that I can explore in the land of beer, but why have one every dinner? It doesn't really help you in any way. So how about defaulting to non-alcoholic drinks as a new habit? And that is a habit that stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I would have learned that or started that just living in Cape Town, you know? So the last 4 years of being a nomad have certainly helped me, learn a whole lot of new habits. So now being back in Cape Town means I'm still Randolph, but I'm not the same person that, I was when I left Cape Town 4 years ago. And I now find it much easier to connect in different ways, go to other places, and really question myself, is this what I'm doing now really what I want to do? Or did I have an experience years ago that I would like to repeat? And I'm now looking for something similar in the environment that I already know so well.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, what is home to you? It's a question that you actually asked me, and I was like, huh, interesting. So, I'm throwing it back to you. What does home mean to you?
I mean, you had some time to think about that question now. What is your answer to that?
Well, my answer is always I don't want to be like, oh, home is like where I am or whatnot, but more specifically where I have my books and where I can have a library and where I have my instruments, that's home. And my dream is to have several homes around the world where I have a library and a room with instruments. Because, when I'm traveling and I'm on the road and I'm like living out of a suitcase, that is something I can't have. Like, that's just something that's not, well, maybe I'm limiting myself, but it's something I'm not going to be traveling with a library and all my instruments. So, yeah, for me, it feels more like a home when I have those two things around. Even when
Interesting.
even
Okay.
even when I was living in Bali, I don't know, for 5 years, I made sure that I was buying books and instruments. I bought all instruments, like a guitar, I had a keyboard, I'd buy instruments and I'd buy books, and that would feel like home to me. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think for me, I've probably got two answers to that. The last 4 years, my answer was usually home is Cape Town, but for now, home is wherever my two yellow suitcases are standing,
Yeah.
and so I usually said right now, home is wherever I was at that time. Um, and long term, you know, home might be back in Cape Town, but I was also always looking out for the place I'm now at. Could that be my new home? And I must say, after traveling 4 years, 4 different continents, often following people's advice on that told me, oh, you should try San Diego, you should try Daha or places like that.
Mm-hmm.
You might like that place. It's kind of like your vibe. I whenever I heard something like that being told, I was like, okay, plan off. I never made any travel plans anyway, so I tried to travel to that destination as soon as possible, only to find out it usually was beautiful places that I had, you know, enjoyed being, but I didn't feel that turning that into my new home.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, I continue saying Cape Town will probably be my home at the end of this nomadic journey. And I'm trying to feel while I'm here whether I now make Cape Town my home again, or whether it's just a temporary stay till after Africa Burn, and then I'm off again conquering the world. So, it's, as I said, I don't like planning anyway. Saying that I'm going to stay around about Cape Town for such a long time is highly unusual anyway. So I'm curious as always, and exploring every single day, whether I do find my pocket of people, of, you know, lifestyle where I say, yeah, this does feel like home. I'm searching, and I'm positive it might in the long run be Cape Town, but until then, it is where my two suitcases are standing. And literally in my old bedroom, the two suitcases, I'm living out of the two suitcases. I haven't even bothered to you know, unpack them because I'm just waiting for the next Airbnb booking of this house to then say like adios. And
Mm.
I might be renting out a place down the road or in Luxembourg or wherever, or ask a friend if I can crash their couch to because that nomadic journey is, I got very used to that. And I felt much more of a sense of freedom to only own two suitcases because I could literally tell myself, if all my old belongings that might be in storage here in Cape Town, you know, if all of that burned down, it would be sad for the nice yellow house, but it wouldn't be about the belongings that I've got basically no connection to anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Something that was coming to me as you were talking was also for me the importance of my tribe or my people, because when I was traveling so much, it mattered much less than today, because I could like just find people and find my tribe wherever I was. That was like more in my mindset. And it's shifted now because I love being surrounded by people, like people that know me well, that I know well, that I could also meet other people, but there's just certain connections that also make it feel like home. And it's as I'm a little bit older, it has gotten more difficult to just go off. Like even last year, I went traveling for 3 weeks to Mexico. And this is someone who used to just travel all the time. And I struggled. I was like, I miss my friends, you know? So it's just interesting
Mm.
how it changed for me and how it evolved from that nomadic lifestyle to something less so. So as we are wrapping,
Um,
yeah.
Perfect link for me to say, I mean, particularly due to the travels, but also due to where friends moved over the years, I would say my tribe of friends is so distributed. The beauty was now that I was able to stay and live with them whenever I traveled. So 80% of the time, I wasn't paying for accommodation. I was staying in friends' guest rooms, couches, and that allowed me to turn friends from, you know, good friends to real friends because I now really know them. I live with them, not for like a night, but for weeks, on the one hand. And the other thing is realizing that you know, my tribe is something that I'm deeply longing for, and I do not seem to find that in one place alone. So because my tribe is that of global citizens spread all around the world. I feel so much more connected to this ADHD entrepreneur sitting in Nepal than I sit to people that I've known for years, in
Mhm.
certain cities of where I lived over the years. That, I value social media and our interactions we have in all of these little communities so much, that digital detox for me really is something that I struggle seeing. And building a tribe is definitely now, one of my next big challenges. And, it starts with, the tribe of colors, which now is going to bring a lot of these friends together, coming to Africa Burn, to my theme camp that I just, launched and announced a couple of weeks ago, making that my main priority up all the way till May. And this to me really means kind of a world, because building a tribe to me is not something that is a local thing. It is a global thing. And that's probably the biggest learning that I took from my nomadic journey.
I love that. So I could chat with you for hours because I can tell that you have so many stories. But is there any story that's like your favorite story to tell someone that doesn't know you, that is maybe a little bit shocking or surprising or funny or weird or different? I don't know, like a favorite story about yourself that you love to tell as we wrap up this chat this time.
Ooh, good one. Spontaneously, I can only think of that blind date that I flew to Ecuador for.
What?
I can
A
imagine
blind date.
on
So,
OkCupid.
okay, so you didn't
Yeah.
know what
I
they
mean,
looked like.
a match on OkCupid. Well, okay, not completely blind. No, I mean, you see 5 photos on their profile.
Okay.
OkCupid, it's a 98% match, which is, yeah, we should get along for a day or two. And effectively, the second sentence I told her was, I would like to come visit you. Looks interesting. Ecuador looks beautiful. She had a travel business, a travel agency. So, you know, long story short, I booked the flight. We knew best case is we got a month together. Worst case is we got a month together, or we'll find ways to part ways amicably. And, it turned into a lasting friendship, though not a, love relationship beyond that 1 month. And, having the freedom to just go and leave whatever, I'm with behind to try something like that. That is my biggest privilege in life.
Wow. Cool story. So I have a couple of would you rather questions that I want to ask. And this is just for shits and giggles to see what would you rather do. Would you rather only be able to communicate via emojis or in movie quotes?
Emojis. I suck at pop culture, barely know any quotes.
Okay. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses, 100 horses that are the size of a duck, or one horse-sized duck?
Give me the 100 horses.
Would you rather have fingers that are as long as your legs or legs that are as long as your fingers?
The long fingers.
And one last one. Would you rather have a constantly changing hair color based on your emotions, or would you rather have tattoos that appear all over your body showing what you did the day before?
Constantly changing tattoos. I'm in. Yes. That sounds exciting.
Me
Hair
too.
color, I do like to stick. Hair color, I do like to stick to the one, So
Yeah.
that's a no for me. Give me the tattoos. That would actually be so much cooler. I don't have a single tattoo because I wouldn't accept an outline of Africa. Yellow tattoos, by the way, are not possible, or they fade away within way too quick to make it worth actually applying. So the only reason why I don't have a tattoo is because I wouldn't know what is the one thing that I want to still feature in, you know, 30
Mm-hmm.
years time. So give me the changing tattoo. That sounds exciting. Please.
Yeah, I agree with you because imagine if we had tattoos that showed what we did yesterday. Number one, we'd have to be conscious of everything that we do because the very next day it would like show up on our bodies and tell the whole story of what we did. That would be fascinating and also a really great way to connect with people up front, going like, huh, your tattoo today says you did your X yesterday. Tell me more, right? So Yeah. Randolph, thank you so much for this
Yes.
chat. This was so much fun. I'll tag your Instagram and everything in the captions of this video and everything, and people can find you. Is there anything specific that you want to share as we part? Any last final thoughts or words of wisdom?
Nothing really. Stay yellow, stay curious. Thanks so much for the opportunity. It was fun talking. Thanks, Anna.